So, Unforgettable, late season 4, which is why when we open there is still some lingering question of Harry being infatuated with Seven. Chakotay is dealing with a technical glitch, see, so he tells Harry, if there's a problem, work closer with Seven so this doesn't happen again. Naturally, this is taken as an opportunity to poke fun at Harry's love life, which should be done at every opportunity, so point one for Tom. Well, before the porn parody plot can kick off, a space fight breaks out, except...
On screen. There's nothing out there.
I knew it! Those damn space ninjas are still after me. Put out my anti-ninja traps.
Captain, first of all, these are mouse traps, and second of all, there is no such thing as ninja chow. Eventually, only one ship is left. The other one decloaks for a little while, then cloaks again. It's kind of on the fritz there. The one on board, played by Virginia Madsen, is in trouble, but they can't beam her out, so they're going to have to head over there to see if they can help.
Environmental systems are not functioning. Oxygen levels are dangerously low.
But the artificial gravity still works. Isn't it funny how it's always that way? Especially when the gravity causes hard, heavy beams to smash into the floor, where the gravity is pulling everything. I mean, that is gravity's whole deal. Smash shit into me, and I won't break. When you are pinned under debris, no worries. I'll ensure you'll be trapped and helpless. Guaranteed. You know, it never occurs to anybody, like, say, Chakotay here, who needs to get a bulkhead off someone without causing the beam that bulkhead is partially supporting to fall, that you might just turn off the gravity to make the whole thing a non-issue. Now, I'm not picking on this episode specifically, because this is a common problem. It's just it's rather overt this week, so I can't help but notice it. So the woman who's rescued talks to Chakotay like she knows him well, and then passes out, though this is not uncommon with anyone who's had to listen to Chakotay for very long. The doctor is having problems of his own.
How is she?
I'm not certain. When I scan her, the readings won't stay in the database.
Well, lucky thing your brain doesn't use a database to store information, huh?
Well, what do you mean? Of course it does, Captain. Oh, excuse me, I have to tend to a patient here. Let me just scan her and...
Looks like the data's not staying in the tricorder, huh?
How'd you know that? This is the strangest thing, Captain. We've got to get on this software problem immediately. For the last time, Commander, if you bring me a patient, you must tell me right away. How can I do my job otherwise? Captain, this is intolerable.
Doctor?
Oh, look, a patient. Where is my tricorder? She explains that there's a reason that she knows him, because she's been here before. Her people have an effect so that when they leave, people quickly forget that they were ever there, which isn't surprising. That happens with the technology that saves the day all the time. I mean, did you remember We Can Raise the Dead? Probably forgot all about that, didn't you? Just tossed the body out the airlock without so much as a bagpipe version of Amazing Grace. The explanation she gives to this is full of holes, but we'll roll with it. It is easier to accept the idea that they also have technology that works hand in hand with their covert nature, Put all your points in the same area to really munchkin them up, you know how that works.
I came back because I fell in love with you.
Oh boy, here we go. Romance with a non-regular. I wonder where that's going to go. Romance in Star Trek is handled a lot like a terminal disease. If you find out that someone has it in the show who's a regular, the only thing you're going to wonder is how it's going to go away before the credits roll. You know, if Geordi wakes up and has a fatal case of Romulan chlamydia or something, we know that he won't die. It's a foregone conclusion. We're just going to wait to find out how it is that he survives. Romance is just like that. We know Virginia Madsen isn't joining the cast, so how will their relationship end is the question in the background the whole time. I brought up before Hitchcock's bomb under the table thought experiment. The audience knows, so it adds tension waiting for the explosion. Well, the same applies here. We're waiting for what is going to screw this up. A show has to be willing to allow a character to be added in a recurring role, like on Deep Space Nine with Cassidy Yates, where the character can then enter or exit the storyline as needed. Relationships between characters like Paris and Torres or Jadzia and Worf don't have this problem, but they require a lot more work to do. Now, I know someone could argue that most things are usually a foregone conclusion, but to always know this is going to be a downer saps the enjoyment out of it. It's one thing to know the Borg are going to be defeated, it's another to know that you're going to watch someone sit miserably because their heart was broken. It's either going to be, I don't care about this character, so this is tedium ending in predictability, or I care about this character. Boy, I can't wait to see how their happy ending is going to be shat on. Now, I know what you might be saying. Chuck, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. To which I say, yeah, but the problem with that is that the journey doesn't usually work out all that well. Writing a romance to fit into that small of a time frame, remember, once you take out the titles and all of that stuff, you're usually left with, at most, about 40 minutes of material to fit in the entirety of this romance, from nothing all the way through to tragic ending. That's just not something that most people can pull off. Renee Echeverria on Lessons over in TNG is probably the best that we've gotten. He managed to infuse that with some genuine character. That worked, okay? But most of the time, it just doesn't play to the strengths of the people who make Star Trek. What further compounds the issue is that there are no consequences for the most part. Part of what made Lessons work was the fact that it showed the consequences of a previous episode. Inner Light, remember? The whole flute thing. That provided something with which to build the structure upon. But when you take a series and then you don't have any kind of character progression, then the emotional journeys are meaningless because the journeys end as if they had never happened in the first place. Why don't we use this as an example for us? We're in late season 4, and this relationship will end in tragedy. How is that going to affect Chakotay going forward? After all, this is a man who has left all of his loved ones back home and may never see them again. But out here, he has had the shining light of love come into his life. He has found someone to make every day brighter, to make his existence have meaning again. What a wondrous thing, and now it has been stolen away. The one good thing that could have come from all of this has been stolen from him. And what effect will this have upon him? Diddly squat. You know what would be fun to do? If you need to introduce a recurring villain, introduce them as a love interest first. Hey, they're recurring anyway. Why not? There are tons of options that you can go with that then, depending upon the nature that they have with the good guys. Imagine how that would impact things. You've got the whole torn between the heart and the duty thing, or was using them the entire time, has had their mind altered so they both are and aren't the former lover. Even the vindictive over a personal event during the romance thing. There's tons of options to go with that. I mean, just think how much this episode would matter if it turned out that Virginia Madsen was his love interest till the end of the season and then became their enemy throughout all of season 5. By the way, I'm not talking about anything like what was done with Seska. That was a backstory situation. I'm talking about actually developing a relationship that the audience witnesses so that they might be invested in it as well. There's a big difference between that and finding out the bad guy also happens to be your crazy ex-girlfriend. So they start looking for any proof that she was actually on board before. She claims she was here for weeks, searching for a runaway to bring back to her people. While they look into that, Chakotay is hanging out with her, heading to the mess hall to try to get some details. Torture, good way to get answers. She wants to talk about their romance, but he would rather stick to the facts rather than delving into that. So she explains that she triggered an intruder alert. Observe Chakotay's expertise in action as he knows how you handle an armed intruder. Do nothing even as they begin to point a gun at you.
Wrong direction.
I have no military training, and even I could have gotten off a shot on her before she turned that, while I was drunk. I'm starting to think that that's not even a tattoo above his eye. It's just a pattern left from all the people that he let shoot him in the face. And so she finally starts telling the story of what happened after she didn't blast him.
And you keep trying to talk about your feelings. I'd rather you stick to the events, not the emotions surrounding them.
Why? Does it make you uncomfortable?
Well, he's Chakotay, that's why. Man's part tree. My people have a saying, Captain. I am Groot. He finally makes clear that whether or not there even was a relationship, the fact is he feels nothing for her, so she didn't touch him deeply enough, or in the right place. Catching up is soon interrupted by her people arriving to blast them.
Their weapons are going through our shields as if they weren't there.
Match shields to the frequency of their particle beams.
No effect. Shield strength down to 29%.
Oh man, if the shields fail, how will we stop the weapons that pass through shields? We are so screwed. They'll keep this up until she returns, and she doesn't want to. Chakotay says, fight them. That's the side he's coming down on. And Janeway is, of course, only too glad to go along with that plan. So, with her helping them out momentarily to be able to detect the ships, they blast the bad guys good until they go a-running. While they work to get the ship going again, it was damaged so that it can only move on thrusters, which is the equivalent of getting out and pushing. They're going to try to turn those temporary modifications into permanent fixtures. That way they won't get sucker punched again. Chakotay and Kellen bond a bit, but afterwards, Chakotay is having trouble sleeping. So he goes to see Neelix, and that's a certain way of passing out. You know, boring stories, body odor, it's dealer's choice, really.
Problems? Forgive me, I wasn't trying to pry.
The people who wrote this script were not regulars contributing to Voyager, hence they apparently were not up to speed on everything and did some serious character damage to Neelix in the process, doing things like making him self-aware and useful, bordering on insightful. We better put a stop to that shit.
Sometimes it's best to be straightforward. It's obvious how she feels about you. To me, at least, I see how she looks at you. Might that be the source of your consternation?
I can't deal with a Neelix that is neither annoying nor gormless. Knock it off, you're freaking me out. It's like watching a cat do the dishes.
You don't trust her. Not really. May I suggest that maybe it's yourself you don't trust? Your own feelings that you're afraid of? Sweet dreams.
In all seriousness, I've always thought Ethan Phillips was better than the material they gave him. Scenes like this are why. As I said with Mortal Coil, I have too much history with Neelix to be objective. But even I can recognize when the character is actually being put to good use. He's no Guinan, but he illustrates how he could be a positive element on the show if he had been kept in a Guinan-like role instead of that of odious comic relief. Kellen offers to leave, but Chakotay says he wants her to stay. They're definitely in love now, and things are better. Even Tuvok is cracking jokes talking about where Kellen's experience as a tracker could be put to use on Voyager. But security is probably the best choice. Frankly, I think we could use some, because our current security chief doesn't seem to think, hey, you know, we had 2 people running undetected around this ship before, and now their entire race is after us. Maybe we should have some routine checks to make sure there isn't one of them on board? Nope. It's when Kellen finds a broken vase in her quarters that she figures out that there is definitely one on board. Either a clumsy one or one that feels the need to advertise. She tells Chakotay the jig is then up, and then the guy appears and blasts her in the head with the brain scrambler trackers use in order to erase all memories of outsiders from their people. Well, Slow Draw McGraw once again pulls out a weapon with a stun setting on it, and lets the other person do whatever they feel like before they're finally just kind of done with it, and he can just put the gun down. I wonder if he doesn't even keep that thing loaded. He just likes to point it at people. So yeah, because of the slowest gun in the West, she got the full blast. She is going to completely forget everything about Voyager now. I could use one of those myself. Before her memories are gone, she asks Chakotay to help her remember what they had once she comes back around again. He tries finding the Control Z for the device, but even threatening to rough up the tracer doesn't get him any answers, except that she's going to go back home to serve as a deterrent to others who might try to run away. Well, Chakotay tries talking with Kellen, but she's no more ready to accept the story than he had been. So she's going to leave and figures that's for the best. But he doesn't want to forget all of this, so he starts writing it all down on paper to make sure that it's not lost for good. At least until someone comes along and accidentally ruins it, because everybody forgets what it's for. Post-episode follow-up. I'm going to give a pass on Stupid Neelix moment because I honestly feel that if the character was regularly written like this, there wouldn't be a need for this category. We have an ancient Chinese secret, huh? For writing. It is technically something ancient, but also something that is still being practiced in the time of Star Trek, so I'm calling it. Final score for Unforgettable is 4 out of 10. There's just no energy to this romance whatsoever, and the overall plotline is just a bunch of excuses to justify the necessity of the contrivance. Besides which, any time that I'm praising Neelix over the main characters in the story, you've probably done something wrong.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
I'm afraid.